Hey everyone, welcome to the OpenDev Technical Fellowship call in March 2025. It's the call where you hear for the first time about Basty blocks. It's the chat, it's the conversation where you hear everything about what Gavin Wood is building with Gem. It's the call for the technical fellowship members where they can hear what everyone else is doing. And it's always a great opportunity for the community to listen in and learn what's the current status, what is everyone working on. Last month, for example, you could really feel this momentum that a lot of people in the fellowship are working on the next version of Asset Hub, on this migration of Hub and all the great things that are coming to Hub. So I'm really excited every time I get this opportunity to speak with all of you, learn what's going on. And the mode in which we are operating right now is that we go by ranks. So the fellowship has ranked tiers, depending on how much experience, how many years, how many contributions you have made to the fellowship, you rise in the ranks. Gavin Wood with rank number 7. And so it's always an honor to speak with you, Gavin. Hi. Yeah, so
hello.
Hi, Gavin.
Hello. Yes, rank
Hey,
7.
Gavin. So last month we had this video submission from you,
Yes.
where you reported about the command line interface, the REPL that you were building.
Mm-hmm.
And on the same day or the day before, I had the opportunity to see you produce, like working with it, like live. And then a few days later, we saw something very exciting happening. So I'm really excited to hear about your what was going on in the last month and everything that happened.
Yeah, so I was about halfway through the Jam tour last time. So I was in the, I think, Asia, I don't know, Taipei or Hong Kong or somewhere, and didn't have much. I mean, it's going to be really late, so that's why the video message. But so in the last month, I finished up the Jam tour. So I got back a week and a half ago from mainland China. And since then, the REPL was merged into our PokerJam code base. But this, I'm hoping I'll be able to, before the next call, make a release binary release of the REPL and probably of the testnet creation executable, so that be able to create your own PokerJam testnet and kind of mess around on it. We'll also be hoping to release open source already, the core VM service and some of the tooling for it, so you'll be able to actually start playing around and deploying real software directly onto a Jam testnet. What have I been doing other than that? So I've actually just finished and merged the one of the biggest things for the grey paper 064. I'm going to put the 064 out release in probably today, maybe tomorrow. And this is for doing this is for summarizing activity on chain. Essentially, it's really helpful to know what's actually happening in the cores and also in the main Jam chain from the outside world. And although you can build this stuff into clients, it's kind of annoying to do so, because you kind of have to bring out like kind of data that is half like kind of in the refined pipeline or halfway through the block, and it's messy, and it could lead to sort of kind of consensus errors, not really consensus errors because they wouldn't be used for the actual block execution, but kind of consensus errors like RPC differences over what different node implementations actually, how they report their activity and so forth. So the nicest thing to do, particularly for the development period of Jam, is just to have the whole thing defined and on chain. So basically there's now an on-chain piece of data. It gets updated every every block, but it tells you actually what's happening throughout the whole of Jam. So it tells you what all cores are doing, how much gas was used, what services are doing, how much gas was used for them, how many different work items are being done, how much is going through accumulate, and so forth. This, it turned out, was a bit more effort than I had originally expected, because there's quite a lot of kind of logistics of getting information from this part of the protocol through this part into this part. And so it took a few days. But anyway, that's merged now. I think you can probably see it if you go to the grey paper repository. And then that's going to be, I think I've got one more thing to look into, one more issue just to check, and then I'll do a 064 release, and people can get on with implementing this activity statistics. This is going to be very handy for the Jam Toaster as well. And I think we already have a member of the Jam Toaster team, Erin, who I think most people probably here know, is implementing a nice little web front end for viewing activity statistics and getting a feel for what's happening on the Jam chain. So the fun thing to do, of course, will be to run Doom on a bunch of cores and like see the graph going up as you see the activity increasing. Possibly in the future, we'll also add to the activity statistics, so we can, like, for example, have some sort of transaction throughput activity statistic, which is kind of a bit, I mean, it's kind of a bit, it could be incorrect, right? Because there's nothing, Jam doesn't understand the concept of a transaction. Like, it would be up to like whatever code is running in Refine to like tell Jam how many transactions it's gotten through. But it could be useful for these kind of bullshit TPS metrics to be able to kind of just measure it easily and visualize it using the same visualization apparatus as everything else. Yeah, I think that's most of it. That's mostly what I've been up to. There are a few other bits to the grey paper, and obviously at the same time as writing the grey paper specification for activity statistics, it's also been written in the Polkadot implementation, so that we can immediately release test vectors for activity for this new 064 release.
Awesome. Thank you, Gavin. I have two questions. The first one is can I consider this something like a debug output or a log console, or is it of a different format?
No, it's not really a debug output. It's more so actually I think it's more, I'm not sure how Linux actually does CPU like usage monitoring, but presumably there is some Linux syscall that lets you see, how much a CPU core is being utilized, and it would be used for, things like POP, where you can see the activity, right? So it's basically that. It's the means of getting the information to display in top, the Jam top, right? From Jam, like, because normally that'd be really hard. Like, Jam itself, before this change to the protocol, didn't expose that. And so in order to get at that information, you would have to have a specially altered Jam node that was keeping a track of what was going on. And in fact, it's even worse than that, because we distribute workload out across the network, and therefore you'd actually have to be several, like, a special node that's just deployed everywhere on all the validator nodes, so that it can then evaluate the work packages and see how much work they actually did, and then tell you that back into your top process, which is kind of crazy. So instead of doing that, which is really mental, what we do is actually report, like, with the work reports, how much work was done. So we report, like, not just how much gas was utilized per service, but also things like how many exports there were per service, how many imports there were per service, what the extrinsic sizes of data, how many there were, and what their sizes were per service, per work item. And then we can kind of tabulate it either like per service and get like this service used all of these resources, whereas this little service only used these resources, or get it per core and say, well, on this core, there was a lot of work being done, whereas on that core, there was not so much work being done. And you can kind of see this, like, you get this already, right, on if you run, like, I don't know, a system activity console. You'll see it either per CPU core, so I can look at the top of my screen here and see how active each of my CPU cores are at any given time. I get a little bar for each one, and it kind of goes up or down depending on whether it's got work that's being done. Or you can see it on a per process basis, right? And then you can, like, that's where you can, like, write top, and it will tell you what percentage of CPU each process that's running on your machine is consuming. And we can kind of get both of these now from our activity statistics. And what else? Yeah, so we get bandwidth, which is kind of like, I don't know, disk IO or whatever, memory IO, extrinsic input output. We get accumulate IO, accumulate activity, refine activity, is authorized activity. There's all sorts of different on transfers. We can see how many transfers are being processed by each service, and so forth. Basically, all of the stuff that Jam is doing, we can get an up-to-date, like, kind of real-time readout of this. And because it's part of the protocol, it's like every implementation has to implement this, and therefore everyone, we're going to get, like, the same information, right? It's not the case that it might differ depending on which validator nodes are being run.
Okay, that sounds very helpful. Okay, so my second question, Gavin. So this month you have shown, or last month, like in the last month, you have shown that you have been running Doom on chain with me. And I would say in the recent days, there was a lot of discussion also on Twitter, and then some people have claimed that it is not really run on Jam, and it was a very extensive discussion. But maybe you want to use the floor here to share basically your perspective, or how you would basically explain how Doom is running on chain.
So I'm not really sure what people who say it's not running on chain, what they're using, what argument they're using. Aside from anything else, they don't know the code that's actually running because it isn't released yet. So I think this is probably just Twitter idiots being idiotic and saying stuff that they want to be true more than stuff that they know to be true. No, Doom was running absolutely on chain. It was running in one of the Jam cores, and with, well, it was running in Core VM, right? So Core VM is a Docker-like service that provides a machine, like kind of PC-like machine, for software to run in. To the extent that software doesn't really know much of a difference between running in this and running in on a real machine. And Doom was basically retargeted to PVM and to this platform, in much the same way it would be retargeted to Windows or DOS or Linux or macOS or whatever else. It was just another one of those platforms, and then it was executed, like it just ran. Now the thing I'll concede is that it's not going to be a version of Doom, like it's not particularly enjoyable to play because there's a substantial amount of latency, right? Blockchains are not like real-time systems. Like the data goes in and then it kind of, a decentralized network of nodes crunches through it at a reasonable amount of sort of temporal granularity, which in our case is 6 seconds, and then they come to a consensus on what the repercussions of that logic is, and they agree on it and finalize it. So it's like playing Doom through this loop is well, you're going to get pretty bored, right? Because you're going to be waiting, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 12 seconds for feedback on when you shoot a baddie, right? However, what it does show is that we have the data bandwidth, we have the platform neutrality, and we have the computational processing bandwidth to be able to do normal stuff like normal software. And that was really the point of it. But yeah, there was this guy who was like, "Oh, it's not really on chain, or Jam's just a DA layer." I mean, they didn't understand shit, and fair dues to them. They came into the room and they kind of over 126 different messages back and forth, kind of got a bit of a better idea about what Jam did. But we're inevitably going to have a bit of blowback from other ecosystems because what we're doing is just so fundamentally better than what they've managed. It's we're through core VM on top of Jam, we're able to do something that just hasn't been done yet, and so they're going to want to pick it apart and try to understand what it is precisely, taking as pessimistic and cynical a view as possible in order to sort of protect their pride, and B, eventually try to copy it, the good ones at least. So the on-chain, off-chain thing is kind of it's kind of a dumb argument for Jam, because so Jam has a chain, right? And there is some logic that happens on chain, which is to say the logic is executed and the data that logic needs is provided to all nodes on the network. Now, there's an argument that says, well, if it's not provided to all nodes on the network, then it's not really on chain, right? This is a useless definition of on chain, because it focuses on the how and disregards the what. So what on-chain stuff does, right, is provide a fundamentally secure, generally secure through some means of decentralization and crypto economics, fundamentally secure computation platform, right? Now, to do that, early blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum made all nodes on the network get all of the data and execute all of the logic. Yeah, that's just how they achieved this level of computational security. But it's as we see things moving, particularly in the Ethereum ecosystem, there is an idea of saying, well, actually, maybe not all nodes need to get all of the data and do all of the logic. What we'll do is we'll say, well, if they, maybe they can use ZK proofs and prove that computation was done correctly, such that the nodes on the network only need to get the proof data and run the proof logic. And this is much less than the sort of original data and the original logic, right? And it's kind of like compression of correctness, right? That's what we would say. And this is fine, right? And there's an expectation that this doesn't alter the security of that underlying computation, right? And there's a just general acceptance that it's fine. And it's okay. It is fine. I mean, there's centralization biases and all the rest of it that I've talked about before, but it's in principle, it is a good way of compressing correctness. It's just an economically incredibly inefficient way. There are other ways of compressing correctness. Again, Ethereum, as we've seen, optimistic rollups, which I've previously called pessimistic rollups, because they are so incredibly ineffective in terms of suboptimal in terms of time to finality, that have also compressed correctness. Well, it turns out that Jam has its own way of compressing correctness that allows it to project the correctness of the chain's computation out into its stateless DA cores, right? And we've written that protocol. It's called Elves, and it's published and it's well reviewed. And this is a way of compressing correctness on chain. And therefore, it doesn't make sense to try to distinguish whether a particular piece of computation happens to be done by all nodes or not. under this circumstance any more than it does to say whether a particular piece of computation was done by a ZK generator, a ZK proof generator, a ZK proof verifier, or whether it's on chain, whether it was done at some other part of the ZK pipeline. Like it's all on chain level of correctness, and that's what matters. Yeah. So people that are nitpicking about precisely which nodes do precisely what are will eventually have to eat shit, because the only way we're going to scale blockchain is by limiting how much data needs to be given to how many nodes, and ensuring through other means than having everyone do literally every piece of computation, the correctness of computation that is finalized.
Very beautiful said. All right. So the thing that I learned basically is that, like, the blockchain is one thing of the overall system, but the computation is somehow separate, right? And we use the blockchain as one tool in the overall system. I think that's a very good insight. All right.
And I mean, you know, it's not a million miles apart from Ethereum's native rollup strategy now, right? Very similar to Polkadot. Polkadot relay chain, parachain architecture. In that there's an attempt to expand the correctness of computation provided from the L1 out into other layers. Yeah, and it's the only difference with Jam is that we're actually really trying to turn it not just into separate layers, each with their own avenue of data and all the rest of it, into a single coherent, or mostly coherent, computational model.
All right. Okay, thank you, Gavin. All right. Okay, let's move on. Next up is Basty, rank 6 in the fellowship. Hi, Basty.
Hey.
Hey, so in the last few days, we had this new terminology coming up with Basty blocks, since you've been working on the 500 millisecond blocks recently. So how has the last month been going for you?
I had like some discussions with Sebastian here. So like we made some decisions around like so I was working before on like, so for example, that the block also changing every 500 milliseconds, and it's probably better to but you don't do that, so that maybe one guy is doing that, like one guy is producing for 6 seconds multiple blocks in a row, and then like, so like it gives like some better security because like otherwise you could because like there's no way of determine who is like the next block also in the 6 seconds, because like the 6 seconds is like what we get from the relay chain. That's like our tick, and based on this tick we can do some like, for sure we can say, okay, like you're not being able to build like on too far in the future, but like in the 6 seconds you could otherwise like do some tricks. So in that is the outcome of that is that it's like it makes it easier, the implementation. So that was one thing. Then I was focusing on like the proofs. So on my early examples there, I was like, every block was like built like before. Everyone was building one proof, and I just put all proofs together and like in a list, and then was executing and on this list. Is like kind of wasteful, because like, for example, like the first block in these multiple blocks per POV is like writing data, and like the second block is reading the same data, and the third block, for example, is also reading again this data. And in my easy implementation there, I was like that would mean like that the data would appear like actually 2 times, but it's actually like output of the first block. So that's would like use more resources and push down like the performance, or like whatever you want to call it. So the idea is there that we actually have like just one proof that checks, okay, there's only the data in that none of the blocks is producing, or that's not part of a transaction that goes into one of these blocks. So like we actually only put in like the data from the state that's not available to the POV. Yes. Besides that, there was like not sure with some people probably seen it. There was like this staking incident or whatever on Polkadot. I was also part in helping to make like a fellowship release for that, which we rolled out. It was 1.4.1, which fixed like the issue. And based on that, I'd written like these requests for proposal for like advanced integration testing. So like if you go to the issue, so like what you could do is like you basically could join like native staking and like staking pools, and so stay like and earn rewards twice with one with the same amount of tokens. And so the and we should have detected that in testing. So and like I've written with FP, that's FP4, that actually like the second FP from the fellowship. I need to get some reviews on it, and then like we hopefully find some people who want to work on that. And so the idea is that they, for example, that they write some kind of having maybe a little bit of AI supported or whatever testing approach, so that you spam the chain with like with calls, and then check always like invariants. Like for example, invariant, you should not be able to have to stake twice with the same stake, or like other invariants. So for example, we had like with the proxies, it should not be able that if you use like the non-transfer proxy, it should not be able that somehow money is being moved out of an account besides like being reserved or something like that. So these are like things that, yeah, would be nice to test. Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Yeah, it has also been a busy month for you with, or a busy few days with the 1.4.1 release. I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Basty? Adrian.
Just a quick question. So if I understand correctly, simplification for the Basty blocks is that they get checked in kind of a batch by the relay chain, right? Rather than checking every one. Okay, that's just one of them.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the idea behind why you can like go faster or like build faster, but it's not like just going faster is not like it had also disadvantages, because like you still need to calculate like the storage route, which takes times, and it's like so yeah.
No, but it makes sense. I think that's a good design. No concerns.
No, I'm just saying that like there's a lot of, actually at some point I want to write it down, but there's a lot of considerations. So for example, if you like, look into Ethereum, there's like this confirmations for transactions. These are probably also nice things to have, because like then you even get like even much faster latency. But then it like depends on economically what you want to do. Like if you just want to press the like button or whatever, it's fine that you based it on times and confirmation. If you, I don't know, if you want to buy for 50 euro in a shop, then maybe wait for like wait for full block. And if you want to buy a house for 1 million or whatever, I don't know, then you probably wait for finality of the relay chain before you say, okay, that's not my house.
Actually, I've got a quick question. What's the roughly what's the speed or the transaction throughput improvement that you get? So presumably when you move from 12 to 6, it's basically double.
Yep.
And then 6 to 3. I mean, as you're going to get lower, you're going to have higher block overhead. Like, what's the point at which block overhead just becomes way too much, and you just don't get any speed improvement, any throughput improvement by reducing?
I mean, like you don't like the basic, like, so you don't really get a performance improvement just by putting multiple blocks into one POV. It's more like if you need to then combine it with elastic scaling, because like if you then elastic scaling multiple blocks, then you actually get like multiple cores, and then you can like get 6 seconds of execution time on the. So that's then the way of. So like what Tommy calls like a Basty blocks or whatever. It's like more like it reduce the latency, but it doesn't improve throughput. So
Yeah, but
throughput
if you
only
have 12 cores, say.
Yes, I mean, then it goes depending on what the how long the storage root calculation or the block overhead. So per seconds minus whatever is your block time. But I mean, we also that's another thing is right now we don't really produce in parallel because what you could do is maybe you have a faster collector that's being twice as fast as the standard hardware of of Polkadot validators. Then you could probably produce 6 blocks. But to produce or to 6 POVs. So if you want to produce 12 POVs, you would need to be 4 times faster than what's the validator on Polkadot support.
But suppose you just buy the fastest CPU possible. You just have ridiculously good hardware. At what point and it's centralized, right? You only have one block producing node or whatever, one collator.
Yeah.
How is that? Is there not a block? I don't know, some sort of fixed amount of time that is spent per block, doing something, and therefore there's probably some amount of time below which it doesn't make sense to reduce the block period. But I'm just wondering if we know what that is.
I don't think so, but I mean so for example, if you just go faster, we for sure would need to overthink certain things. For example, we do a lot of things in initialize and on finalize, so at the beginning, at the ending of the block, and it's probably not that useful to do that every 500 milliseconds or every even if you go faster. So for sure, if you on initialize and finalize takes 200 milliseconds, then if you go to 200 millisecond blocks, then you're just doing only block initialization and then finalization, and then you're not adding any transactions. So, but as I said, I think it's more we should have a layered approach of okay, we have these 500 milliseconds. I think it's probably maybe 400 or whatever, what Solana's doing or whatever, which is then kind of a sweet spot where you probably have still enough room in the block to put transaction into it, but you also get a state commitment that has some more value in it than just, for example, just a pre-confirmation where you say where the collator just says, okay, I included the transaction. You maybe can already do some kind of fetching on the result of the transaction, but I can also just lie to you because it could be, I could just fake it to you.
Okay, I noticed that I think it was Peak. Definitely, I forget which parachain. I think it was Peak. Reported 400 millisecond blocks with, I think they said 67,000 TPS or 6,000.
Yeah, they were using from Andre 15 cores or whatever. Yeah.
15 cores. Okay, but it looked as though it was only a 6.7x improvement over using one core.
I think the post shows that they go from 10,000 to 67,000 transactions per second per block.
How does that work then? If they used 15 cores but only got a 6.7x speed, were they using multiple cores before? Were they using 2 cores before, or is there just some do they just not have the right hardware? Produce blocks that are full enough in the time given?
I'm not their social media manager. I cannot tell you what they have done to do that. So maybe Andre knows more, but
because we would have expected maybe a 2x on top of that.
Yeah, what I think it's happening is that they have some batching going on, so they are not actually using up all the CPUs, or they're bottlenecked by the POV size. So once you add more cores, you can push more transactions. We also saw that in the spamming with batch transactions, we could actually do much more. So, but they're likely, if they're using 15 cores, they're using less than 25% of the compute that those cores provide. So like that's a trade-off. But they have been actually quite silent. I have asked them like, what's the setup? What are you doing there? But nothing came back so far.
Okay, because I think you know, there's going to be some additional activity on chains like Mythos in the coming months, and it would being able to effectively use more cores, even if it means centralizing on block production, is probably going to be quite important. Anyway, good. That's my question.
All right. I had one more question coming in, and the question is basically, is this so when we talk about Basty blocks, is this 12 cores or multiple cores, or is it a lot of parachain blocks, but it's all bundled up into one core?
Whatever you want. But I mean, like, the general idea is that it's like one POV with multiple parachain blocks. But as I said, like, you can then like easily scale to multiple multiple POVs. So like then you like, instead of like having, for example, 12 blocks per POV, you could also have like 4 blocks per POV, and then you have like 3 cores. Then you also end up like, then you have like more like your throughput goal, or you scale by factor 3, because like it makes sense, yeah, 3 more cores or like whatever. So like, but it's like it's a parachain kind of parachain side feature, which is more, it's really more like a latency and not like a throughput throughput thing. The throughput comes then in when you then like take elastic scaling, aka more blocks, more cores. That's then like how you get like more throughput, more data into your blocks.
Got it. All right, thank you. Good. Any more questions from someone in the room? Oliver.
Yeah, one more question. I mean, maybe you mentioned it while I was AFK for a minute, but can you maybe loop in people about this remote proxy thing that's landed on Kusama Asset Hub, and how is it useful, or who can try it out? I'm not sure who is aware of it here.
I think I talked the last time about it, but I can talk again about it. Yeah, that was also like, I think I talked about like already about it. Like that's the remote proxy, so that you can have like proxy execution. Like you have so like, okay. Right now, it's like only configured like that. You have like you for example have a proxy on the relay chain side, so on Kusama, and like you want to have it on want to use it on Asset Hub. That was not working before, and so like we had seen this, that like people requested like stable funds or funds in stables or whatever, and used like a pure proxy from like the say registered on the relay chain, and so they were not able to access the funds on the like on Asset Hub. So like I created like a tutorial, like guide or whatever last year for rather, I don't know, someone from Web3 Foundation, and they created like a good proposal to fix some of, or like to have some of these people who had like locked up funds on Asset Hub. So, and now I've written like these, what I call remote proxy palette or whatever, where you can then like, you have a proxy that's declared on the relay chain side, and you can use it on the parachain by passing in a proof. That was actually not yet deployed on Kusama Asset Hub, because like the runtime upgrade is not yet approved. Because I wanted to write like a tutorial for it, or like a small guide with Polkadot.js, and already sent some funds and already realized that I cannot access them. I need to wait until it's being applied, but yeah, I'm writing the tutorial for people, and then hopefully I will then probably like ping Tibo or whatever, and make like, we already briefly spoke about it, that I get someone who writes like a nice small UI or whatever around it to make it usable, and not like, because like with Polkadot.js it's a bit like Polkadot.js style with copy pasting and doing this kind of things and blah blah blah. So
yeah, the 142 has been applied. I mean, I see a remote proxy relay chain palette on Kusama Asset Hub now. So
yeah, okay. I was checking yesterday. Then yeah, you're right.
It's always a surprise when your code makes it on chain, right?
No, I checked yesterday. I think it was like still saying like it takes 2 days or whatever. But yeah, probably someone came and wrote it with big money or whatever. I don't know.
Good. Okay, then let's move forward. I saw that Sheun joined our call. If I'm reading the collectives packet correctly, he's currently not a member of the fellowship, but I think he is joining to ask a question. So Sheun, if you're hearing us, now would be a good time to step forward.
Sure thing. Thanks, Tommy. I'm not usually a regular at these calls, but I try to follow up on the recordings, and I noticed that there's been a lack of updates about BLS Beefy, and I just wanted to come on here and kind of find out where it's at and when we can expect it to land on Polkadot.
I have some information on the topic. So BLS Beefy was under research by Web3 Foundation. There were some different BLS curves being considered. I don't know the specifics of it, like BLS 371 versus BLS something else. Doesn't really matter. But one of them or two of them were actually chosen, and the primitives are already merged to Polkadot SDK. Some work has been done on the Beefy client, basically on the consensus gadget and the consensus mechanism, all the software doing the consensus on the node side, to support, let's say, different cryptographic signatures, including this BLS stuff. And then that's where the work stopped, basically. And as far as I know, there's nobody working on it right now, and there's no work planned in parity for this. And also, I haven't seen any activity from Web3 Foundation on the topic. So as far as I know, at least, the topic is paused. Right? There's no. To answer your question, when can you expect it? There's no answer. Right? Somebody needs to push it forward if somebody really needs it.
Is this a lack of capacity at parity, or is this from the Web3 Foundation?
I think it requires resources on both sides at this point. It definitely requires resources on parity, and it's a lack of maybe capacity or prioritization, depending on how you want to look at it. Right? Like capacity is not infinite, and things get prioritized or deprioritized, and this is not high on parity's priority list right now.
Well, that's very unfortunate. And I say this because there's proposals that was just recently executed to increase the size of the Polkadot validators. And so I'm wondering how we plan to continue to support BridgeHub and, of course, Hyperbridge if eventually these validators reach 1,000 and it just becomes too expensive to continue to operate these bridges.
So I don't think I'm not aware of a big concern right now with the current numbers, at least for Snowbridge, because that's where I know more of the details. I'm not really involved, or I really don't know much of how your ZK consensus works on mainnet, on bridging with Ethereum mainnet. Maybe you can, you have the answer for that. It needs to come from you, like what are the challenges and how can we,
This is not localized to Hyperbridge alone. I think BridgeHub will also face this if you want to securely prove Polkadot's consensus on any chain. Hyperbridge does use ZK primitives to prove ECDSA signatures. These primitives come from the Ethereum community. They have ZK circuits for proving ECDSA signatures, which is deeply used in the Ethereum community. But of course, there is a complexity associated with this proving that is projected to keep going up. I think someone just said that there's a plan to set the target to 1,000 by the end of the year. So it's not only going to affect Hyperbridge, it's also going to affect BridgeHub as well. So I'm just wondering if maybe this was misprioritized and if there's any plans to bring it back to prioritization.
I really can't say whether it was misprioritized or not. So far, looking at the next, let's say, year of roadmap, it didn't seem like a priority, and it's to my knowledge, it's still not a priority for this year. And then moving forward, obviously, we need to raise these problems and then see what the impact is, what the cost is, and prioritize accordingly. Like just because, I mean, there's no. It's not like we forgot about it and now, oh, okay, we need to do that and we're just gonna do it. We need to see the impact and the costs and take a data-driven decision. I don't have like a yes/no answer to you.
Sharon, a quick question. Is there an estimation at which number of nodes this might become a problem for you?
Oh, it's already a problem, actually. Hyperbridge tries to prove the full consensus for all chains, including Polkadot as well. And this, of course, has increased our proving costs. It has reduced finality latency, so users experience a much longer wait time for transactions that have been already verified by Hyperbridge. And in general, introducing DLSP fee allows us to decentralize, a Hyperbridge prover, which we have to run because ZK is, centralizing technology. So there's not only costs that are associated with this, but also I would say permissionlessness as well. I think this also applies to BridgeHub once again. So, just really hoping here that there's a solution on the horizon for this. Otherwise, if Hyperbridge has to stop working, this will also affect BridgeHub.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody is even considering any scenario where Hyperbridge or BridgeHub stops working. So, well, but we do need to raise the visibility of this, get more data on it, understand better what are the costs, what's the cost curve, at which point does it become a problem for the ecosystem, see what's the cost of actually implementing this, and figuring out where we get the resources for this.
But I mean, I already proposed it to you, Sean, that you're kind of quite being, or you're really interested in that. And I mean, I think that's a really good approach. You want to have a fix. I don't know why you're not driving it. So like I said, we can find resources, money for you to make it happen. You just need to provide people to do that. And then we can see what then we can move forward. Because you say it would improve Hyperbridge quite extensively. That means why not you are doing so? And then a joint approach from the ecosystem, and not always push it to parity or whatever. So
I'm not pushing it to parity. This was supposed to be on the roadmap, and now it's no longer on the roadmap. And there was no communication about this if I didn't come up here and ask for it. But at the same time, we're happy to take this on as well. Of course, we would expect that parity ultimately, which is responsible for reviewing these PRs, does so in a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine approach. I think that's reasonable. So, and I mean, that solves the issue. You have the pressure, you want to have it solved. We can find a bounty that would take that on and finance it, and then parity takes it on to review and then do all the stuff that needs to happen.
All good. That's the end of my question. Thank you, Tommy.
Okay. Do we think this is a proposal that should be funded by the fellowship or by other parts of OpenGov?
I think it's reasonable for the fellowship. It was stated as a technological on the technology roadmap, and it's obviously valuable for ecosystem, for wider ecosystem. Its bridges were already mentioned as being as far ago as the 2016 Polkadot paper as being on the Polkadot product map. So, I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense to have fully functional bridge hubs.
Like Sean says, go beyond bridges. So it helps with decentralizations. It definitely helps with all sorts of light clients, like dApps running on light clients. And so definitely there's there's value here. It's just that, yeah, we can fund it from the fellowship.
All right. Okay, great. We could talk about this and resolve this. Very good. So let's look forward to the proposal that is coming. Okay, we move on, and we are through our first hour, so we need to make sure we stay on track. So let's say everyone gets 5 minutes going forward, and we try to get through those things. Okay, next up is Kian, 4 in the fellowship, with a salary of $10,000 monthly, I believe. Kian, are you with us?
No, he said he will not come. That's the one
okay.
you need to read out.
I wanted to read out. Okay, yeah, so we got actually 2 submissions from people in the fellowship that submitted their written reports. Okay, so what Kian is reporting, and maybe Jay, you can also show it on screen. So my focus area is still almost 100% the new staking system of Asset Hub. In a few weeks, once it is complete and more stable, I want to start a seminar series where in a few sessions I explain parts of the new system in a lecture format with time for questions at the end. I think we can do like 3 sessions of this. I want this to be both for parity engineers and fellowship members, and have the recordings be public such that more people can understand the system and help with its maintenance and remove me as the buzz factor. And second point, there was a conversation recently about whether fellowship can overlook the quality of tips generated by the parity tip bot. I think this is a good topic to discuss if there is time for it at the end. And I'm going to comment on this in a second. And third point, I haven't had much time to work on our JAM implementation myself, together with Oliver and Cisco, but in any case, they usually give updates on gray matter state. Yeah, so for the second point of Kian, the parity tip bot. So the observation that we have made is that there is a lot of proposals coming in from the parity tip bot into the general OpenGov voting tracks. And I think the issue here is that OpenGov voters have a very hard time judging if the proposal is valuable or not. And so there was a discussion to ask the operator of the parity tip bot to maybe move the proposals to the fellowship, because it seems that the fellowship would be the best place to, the most equipped folks to judge actually how good a tip proposal is. I'm not sure, does anyone here know who is operating the tip bot?
Parity.
Parity.
I mean, that's not the problem. So actually, like, I looked into it I think it's a weekend. So like I briefly, like I was like already had opened the tab on wanted to create an issue, but then I realized that like right now people cannot just create like proposals for like the fellowship treasury. So like only people from like within the fellowship can do that. So we actually would first need a solution for that, so that someone can propose their stuff and then it could be moved. Does that make sense?
So, but this is for the tip bot?
Yes. I mean, the point of like you cannot just create the proposal creation is not permissionless like on OpenGov, like main treasury. Main treasury, everyone can come in and make a proposal, and I want to have money. Fellowship treasury, only people above rank 3 can come in and say I want to have money, or like improve someone that wants to have money. So like and like the tip bot right now is like creating these things on its own. So yeah.
And I guess we're not trusting the robots enough to elevate them to rank 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Not yet.
Maybe a hard-coded solution. Okay, so it's not possible for now, but it might be something for the future. Maybe a delegated proxy, something. Maybe someone wants to proxy their account to allow the tip bot.
I hope no one is doing that. So.
Okay, I see. Good, then let's move forward. So, and we have another report. This time it is from Brian Chen, rank 4 in the fellowship with a salary of $10,000. So Brian is writing what he is working on right now. So Boca, a jam implementation, updated to the gray paper version 0.6.2. It passes all of the Web3 Foundation test vectors. It passes some community test vectors from Jamduna, Java Jam, and Jamixir. And he has a working in-core execution and peer-to-peer currently, targeting to be able to run Jam services end-to-end in a few weeks' time. And here's a question: where can I find the Doom service code to see if our implementation can run it? I believe this is a question that Gavin answered before by saying there is going to be an open source release in a few weeks. Okay. So, and then the next point, Polkadot ecosystem tests. He's maintaining existing tests. He is reviewing Rock BMB's work to add many end-to-end tests covering staking, nomination pools, scheduler, and governances. And Brian is considering to build an AI agent for RFP4. That was the one that Basty mentioned previously, but he needs to find some time. And then PVQ, which was previously called XCQ. So the PVQ RFC is ready for another review and aiming to release another update, plus demo tutorial in a few weeks' time. And it is under Polkadot Fedor RFC 126. And Brian is looking forward to working group setup, especially the AHM one, as I expect a lot of collaboration between many teams is needed to ensure everything goes as planned. And then, as a last point, he started XCM version 6 with 2 big refactorings to make it more extensible. He doesn't have time to finish it, and he is looking for someone else to help him. He's happy to mentor and review, and there is a Polkadot SDK pull request 7123. All right, that's the report from Brian. And so let's move on. Is there anyone here with a rank 4? Nope. Okay, then let's go to rank 3, and we're starting with Andre, because you have to drop. Andre, let's go.
Okay, so yeah, the first thing I'm focusing is launching Elastic Scaling. And to do so, we need to do a new release as soon as possible, because it's promised in Q2, quite at the beginning. I myself reviewed the runtime upgrade PR, the upgrade to the stable patch, and made some suggestions there. But more eyes and more reviews helps pushing it further. So I asked everyone who can do it and has content being shipped with that release to help with this effort. And I'm planning more testing on Kusama once we have it. But yeah, I'm hoping to have this part of a new spamming dry run once we also have the light P2P rollout complete. So it should be in April. That's like what I believe can be a good date. But yeah, not so sure with the fellowship release. Other things, I did reviews on the code level design of the new collator protocol implementation. It should improve our collator protocol in terms of resilience. And also did reviews on the low latency parachain design from Robert. It's currently a doc and will be published soon, like on GitHub, probably. Also did look at a few RFCs and provided some reviews there. What else? Quite recently, I reviewed the on-demand parachain implementation from Segu. And I'm happy to see that we're making progress there, but I think a good question to ask is, why would someone choose to implement a parachain that spits out I don't know, 3-4 blocks per day versus not go to the hub and implement the same use case using contracts. So doing a parachain is way more expensive with the deposit and also running the collators versus just using the hub. Yeah. I also did a blog post, which I published quite recently, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I don't remember, So this one talks about the scalability story of Polkadot since launching the parachains, like scaling up the number of validators, and in the end, with scaling up rollups with elastic scaling. I described a few use cases, including like 500 millisecond blocks without Basty blocks, so like the less efficient solution. But it gives you more DA bandwidth if you actually need it. And yeah, elastic scaling, as it's in, it's connected to the Web3 cloud narrative in this article. So I also did a small comparison between like the Web2 cloud and the Web3 cloud, like what's like in terms of a few concepts, what's similar and what are the differences. And I had a bit more content, and I was advised to not put it in that blog post because it already was too long. So I'm writing a follow-up based on that. It's about L2 scalability trade-offs and comparing the things that we did, like very few trade-offs to what others are doing. And on the same subject, I'm quite disappointed that like there seems to be no interest in a webinar session for elastic scaling. So I asked someone to reach out to Teams, and nobody actually seemed interested at this point, at least. So maybe I will do some sort of video to show how to set it up, like deploy it on a real live network, like complementing the documentation we already have, maybe answering a few questions that might get asked. Also, development, like writing code. I did a fix on the maximum uncompressed code size. It seems that accidentally a few years ago, someone made a comment which lowered the uncompressed code size limit from 16 megabytes to 12 megabytes, and some of the runtimes have been like floating. And it turns out that you can actually get stuck and not be able to perform your upgrade when that happens. So there's just one constant defining this. So I kind of deprecated the constant and introduced a new runtime API, which basically computes this constant based on the maximum code size in the parachain host configuration and like a compression ratio, like 10:1, for example. So with this change, it's going to be 30 megabytes and should be good enough. And recently, I was trying to profile PVF execution for some big POVs that I got from the Polkadot DA, like a mythical big block. And it seems that like our tooling didn't work, so I had to make a fix in the Cumulus POV validator. So now it doesn't just work with POVs exported by Cumulus, it also works with POVs that you can recover from the Polkadot DA. Yeah, and this sums it up.
Awesome. Quite a full month. Does anyone have a question for Andrew?
2 months.
2 months. Okay. Then it's fine. Okay. I don't see any questions at hand. So let's move on. Let's move on to Oliver, rank 3 in the fellowship with a salary of $6,666. Hey, Oliver.
Yeah. Hey. So yeah, with 5 minutes, I'm gonna just go right for my topic. So to set the stage, generally, like I consider the Polkadot Fellowship to be a service provider for the Polkadot ecosystem, and I feel like that our current release structure is like we push out updates whenever we feel like it, which I mean is fine for patch releases. I think that makes perfect sense. But for features, I think the question that is asked the most is like when does this happen? Like people don't really care about what it is. They just want to know, when do I have to plan resources to like implement this into my app, or when do I have to be ready to expect this? So I thought that maybe we can adopt like a similar approach to what we're doing in the SDK. Like in the SDK, we have this 3-month releases every quarter. Like in the fellowship, of course, we would have to offset it a bit by, I don't know, 1 or 2 months, so that we have time to get the SDK version updated. Now that increases the latency, of course. If a change gets merged to the SDK, then we would have like, if we offset it by 2 months, we would have like up to 5 months or something like that to get it on chain. So that's surely a consideration. But yeah, I still think that it could help to like have a better communication with the community to tell, okay, we have these dates when we have releases for the runtimes, and then you can expect it to go online on chain, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. Then we can have like marketing to be prepared for these times, integrations be prepared. It's like a bit different approach than to just say, okay, we're gonna do it when we are like feeling it, basically. Yeah, so what do you think?
Any comments or questions?
You want to oversee that? I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I talked with Anil a bit, and yeah, like we have this current release process, but it's more like retroactive or like in a passive way, it just tracks what's happening and then tries to make sense of it after the fact. It's not really like a planned step. Yeah, I mean, I think she wants to help with this as well. But I mean, if the idea is generally accepted, then we can, like start simple with like one date for the next release. It would be like the easiest thing we can do. And then like have the scope written down, like what's gonna be included. I mean, basically similar to what we are doing with our tickets currently for each release, but it would be, it would have like some kind of date attached and be hopefully like on time and so on. Yeah.
Donald.
Yeah, I think it's a nice idea. I don't know if it's going to be something that works to have some like cadence that we release on, but at least getting the like agreeing on a timeline a few months in advance, because at least like if anybody's making any changes to the SDK, you already know that like you need to make a cutoff, which 6 weeks later is released, and it's got a few weeks to get it integrated with the runtimes, and then some weeks to get reviews, and then a release, and then a couple of weeks to go on chain. So like working back from that, you kind of know 4 months ahead of time if your feature is going to be ready to go ahead. So it'd be cool to have some like maybe not fix on the cadence, or like I just think that might be something that we introduce more problems than we fix for ourselves. Like you need to either rush for something or miss it and then wait for a long time. But yeah, ignoring the cadence side of it, I think it's a really nice idea that we communicate these things much further in advance and fix ourselves on a date, say like 3 or 4 months in advance of when it'll actually land on chain. But then still allow ourselves, like if something's ready and it's shiny and cool, then we can just release whenever we want.
So if I understood you correctly, you said like we should, instead of like letting ourselves down to a date, we should just in advance like communicate what will come up.
Yeah, so I'm still saying like when we communicate it like we do with the tickets, we just add on a date to that, but we don't say like we're going to release every 3 months or anything like that. We just say this release, which includes X, Y, and Z, will be out in 3 months. I think that's something we could do for most of the big features that come in, and it also gives us a good target to like shorten this window of time between a stable release going out from the SDK and getting it integrated with the runtimes repo, and then getting those runtimes released. It's like a good metric to set.
But then don't you have like a similar emergent behavior to just setting the dates? Like if you have every 3 months, you have new features from the SDK and people want to have those, then, I mean, okay, the difference is probably that we aren't fast enough with upgrading the runtimes, but yeah.
I think in general, like what I mean, it makes sense, but I would probably like a step before I think it would be better that we communicate stuff much more earlier. So like, for example, like already the point when it, for example, gets merged to the Polkadot SDK, we could start like, we already decided on to like collect like people who are like interested, like builder, like their builders, all the kind of people, so that we can like in advance communicate to them, hey, okay, there maybe will be like this kind of breaking change will be coming up in the time frame or whatever of like 4 months or something like that, so that someone is already aware of like, okay, that's going to happen or something like that. So no one is like really surprised when it then goes like, and then maybe there's another like kind of reminder when it goes to the runtime repo actually, then like, okay, now we're like the runtime repo, now, like the time frame is like even smaller until it hits a chain, and you should have your stuff like change for that, something that I hope that it would help people to be more aware of like what's going on and have stuff prepared or something like that. But I'm not saying that like the perfect solution.
Yeah.
It seems for the currently planned release cycle, you had very clear timelines communicated, at least internally at Parity, for the everything related to Asset Hub. So it seems to me like you already, in a certain to a certain extent, are doing it for the current release. Maybe it's also
we've
worth
really
a try.
We've really tried to do it for asset hub migration because like it affects basically everybody, and there's not really, for some people, there's not a clear upside to it. Like for centralized exchanges and stuff, this is like, hey, everything's changing, and then you need to really give them enough time to react to this, to work out what's going on, and for them to implement it. And I have to say, it's like there are a lot of different channels that we have open, and it's very much like repeated push communications. And for some of them, it was really hard to open the channels. Like people who integrate with Polkadot, sometimes it's hard to find how to actually get in contact with them. But it could be something that we could, as the fellowship, make use of post AHM, like use the same channels that we've set up and try to maintain those and keep them open, and be able to use it as like pushing notifications. And so not just relying on like a post it and they will come approach to change logs, but saying, doing a bit more of like a targeted approach of like, okay, I know this is going to break centralized exchanges, so we're going to hit this channel which pushes that notification directly to them, instead of just posting on the change log and then the referendum comes up and the change log is linked in the referendum. But can you really be convinced that all people who integrate with Polkadot read the referenda or read the change logs? Like I'm not convinced by that. So I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some active outreach for release. There's like 2 channels, one for I think exchanges and one for wallets, but they're managed by by Fellowship Secretary. They don't integrate with Parity integration, so they don't have all the contacts. It's just like whoever managed to join these channels. It's like a disconnect. So, yeah.
All right, I don't hear any pushback, so maybe the next thing would be to do like a temperature check or something in the Fellowship channel, and then maybe move forward. Just push and see what happens. All right, Oliver, any other points to raise before we move on?
No, not really. I mean, I was working on Asset Hub migration. Yeah, but that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you, Oliver. Okay, moving on. Next up is Adrian, rank 3 in the fellowship with a salary of $6,666. Hey, Adrian.
Hey. So last month, actually on the last call, I spoke about Snowbridge V2. And basically this month, I can just say that I was working with the Snowfork team on delivering Snowbridge V2, and the implementation is done. The review is done. It's been sent to security audit, and it will soon be deployed to West End Sepolia testnet. Yeah, meaning it's merged into, it will be merged to Polkadot SDK, deployed to West End. Then the plan is to backport it to maybe 2503, I think, the release of SDK that's going to come at the end of this month, and have it live before end of Q2 on Polkadot. So the plan stays as reported last month for Snowbridge 2. The other part of individual work I've been doing is also Asset Hub migration work, specifically handing over the tracking of DOT total issuance from Relay to Asset Hub. Basically some song and dance between teleports being allowed before, not allowed during, allowed allowed again after. anyway, asset hub migration basically work. And I was also involved in many other work streams related to XCMV5, relating to XCM UX improvements, observability and debuggability improvements, bridge permissionless lanes, and other things. But I'll leave if we have any on the call, I see a couple, but I'll leave the actual, the main author or the main owners of that to give more details. Don't want to steal their thunder. And yeah, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Does anyone have a question for Adrian? Good, then let's move on. And next up is Murem, rank 2 in the fellowship with a salary of $1,666.
Hi. So my focus is the same, almost 100% on asset hub migration, writing the code that maps the data, sends the data from the relay chain to asset hub, accounting the resources for the migration, etc.
Awesome, thank you, Miriam. Good, moving on. Or any questions? I don't hear anything. Good. Okay, thank you, Miriam. Good, moving on. Next up is Sebastian, rank 2 in the fellowship with a salary of $1,666. Hi, Sebastian.
Hey. Yeah, I was mostly working on collator improvements, like the elastic scaling slot-based collator. Like, we wanted to finalize it because previously it was in this experimental state. And this has been merged. Basically, this is like correlated to the discussion that we had with that I had with Basty regarding our slot times on the parachains. In the early days of elastic scaling, like until now, we were basically recommending to have very short like slot times, and the author would switch a lot. But now we are like recommending to have slot times of at least 6 seconds. This makes like the bundling of POVs a bit easier because like when the author doesn't switch so much, you don't have to record the POVs on multiple different nodes and bundle them, but you can do it on a single node. So yeah, makes life a bit easier. And also we want to look into like optimizing the block authoring a bit, because like usually when you have let's say like 2 seconds block times, you cannot just use full 2 seconds to author your block and then directly author the next block. But you always need to like plan some time for the next guy to import your block before they can do some action. And if we have longer slot times, maybe we can like author on one node back to back, and just at the end, when basically the handover to the next author happens, we can cut a bit into the block authoring time to send the block to the next guy. So he has enough time to import it and directly author his block. So yeah, that was basically the result, that we want to have these multiples of relay chain slot duration for us. Yeah, but that work is basically finished. It's merged and will come with 2503. Next for me is looking into some further optimizations, because currently the elastic scaling authoring is a bit prone to relay chain forks. Like in the past, parachains were authoring on all forks of the relay chain, so no matter which one will be finalized in the end, parachain will have produced a block for this fork. But with elastic scaling, we actually don't have the time to author for all the relay chain forks, so we will pick one, and it's usually the best one. But in case where this goes wrong, and in fact, like the other fork will continue to grow, there will be a reorg on the parachain. So the idea to reduce these forks is to author a bit on like older relay chain blocks. Like the forks on relay chain are usually very short. So if parachains don't author directly on the tip, but a bit behind the tip, then we can assume that the forks have already settled. And this way we can basically get rid of the forks. Yeah, this idea is not like super fresh. We already had it last year, but until now, like we didn't have a very good idea on how to enforce this, because like if some author wants, they could still author at the tip again and basically jump some other authors in between. Yeah, and I think I have an idea how to solve this, but I will experiment with this a bit. Yeah, basically I'm thinking about letting the parachains put not only, like they don't need to specify only the relay chain block they want to build on, but also some descendants of this block. So this way they need to prove that the relay chain already has advanced further than the block they are authoring on. And this way you cannot author directly at the tip because like the descendants don't exist yet. Yeah, but until now it's just an idea. I need to investigate this a bit more. Yeah, I think that's mostly it. From my team, I can report that there is like a nice progress on Light peer-to-peer. It's now default on Kusama, and until now, no larger hiccups. So I think we have a bit more than 600 validators there now running with Light peer-to-peer. So looking promising, I would say. Later in Q2, we plan to go to Polkadot if everything goes well. That's it.
All right, thank you, Sebastian. This was very insightful. Yeah, like coming up with these specific ideas of when you maybe want to choose an earlier block. Good. Okay, I believe we are done. Oh, Oliver,
Sorry,
question?
one question. I mean, maybe I don't get how this works exactly, but doesn't it increase some kind of message latency when you don't author on the latest relay tip? Or
Yeah, exactly. Like this is a trade-off to make. Like the further in you author, like if you author 2 blocks behind, then your message latency will increase by 12 seconds. But I think for the forks, like since they are mostly 1 block deep on the relay chain, you could also author like only one block in, and then your message latency would be 6 seconds. I think for many chains it's acceptable, but yeah, if it's not, you can still author at the tip. Like this would be an option that chains can choose to use. And I think like resistance against forks is, yeah, pretty nice to have.
All right, good. So that concludes our rank 2 members. So let's move on to rank 1. And next up is George, rank 1 in the fellowship with $833 salary. So, George, are you with us?
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, George.
I've mainly been working on proof of personhood. There's nothing public yet to show, but that is about to change. Hopefully, by the time we have our next meeting next month, I will have something to show you, which is the people palette. Basically, the interface for interacting with the chain as a person, and some adjacent work that will make it safe. We have a palette for that provides thumb protection, basically, because people get free transactions. They don't use funds. Yeah, so all of that is gonna hopefully come soon by the time we have our next meeting. And working in the background on DIM 1 and DIM 2 and some other stuff that I will not share too much about right now.
Okay, very exciting. Looking forward to this. Does anyone have any questions for George? I believe we all have questions, but we're not allowed to ask them. Or we expect to don't get the answers. Okay, moving on. Next up is Guillaume, rank 1 in the fellowship. And Guillaume, I believe we have not talked before, if I'm correct.
Yes, I missed last month, and I think I joined a few weeks before last month's meeting. So yeah, this is the first time I see publicly everybody.
All right, welcome in the fellowship.
Thank you. Should I go on with yeah? So what I worked on was like
Guillaume, before you start, if you want, like everyone who is new in the fellowship call can make a short introduction. Completely optional, but if you want, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, how you joined the fellowship.
Yeah, so I don't know much to say. So I was in Parity like around 2020, and then I left a bit Polkadot, and I came back more like this summer. And then since I accumulated a bit of work in this summer, I think I made my my candidature to the fellowship, and I got accepted. And mainly I work in the runtime, so this is what you can ask me more if you want the information.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. About the work I did, I mostly work on proof of personhood right now. So like this month, I actually only focused on this. Apart from this, I also try to push forward the transaction extension horizon, but there is not so much update, but there is a PR going on, which should supersede the usage of unsigned, validate unsigned logic to make it use of the general transaction. But it's not merged yet, it's in the audit for now. And it should simplify the process of declaring transactions which are not signed, but has some inherent, not inherent, that the call is can be checked by itself. It doesn't need to be assigned origins. And this will simplify this process. Yeah, this is it.
All right, interesting. Okay, thank you, Guillaume. So who else do we have on rank 1 that I missed so far? I think at some point we're also gonna get to, yeah. So next up is Cisco, rank 1 in the fellowship.
There, can you hear me?
Hey, Cisco.
Hello. Okay, so from my side, I've been working on ERC20 support via XCM. So I'm still trying to figure out, I'm still working on some issues to make it work. But the importance of it is that ERC20s will be able to be cross-chain transferred between parachains and even via Snowbridge, for example, so that you can just do a teleport or a reserve transfer with ERC20s on the hub. So working with Pilot Revive. Then just doing fixes for XCMV5, making it ready for when it's live. And on that note, I'm also working on XCMV5 documentation, working with the Papermoon team to get some documentation out. Lots of ecosystem agents want to be ready for XCMV5 and update their stuff, specifically Paraspell with their XCM SDK. I've been working on that. Also tweaking the content for the PBA, the PBA's XCM module, which will happen in a few weeks. And then on the gray matter side, as Kian mentioned, we have been trying to catch up with the test vectors from Jamduna and so on. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Cisco. Good. I don't see questions, so let's move on. Next up is, I see a raised hand. Daniel.
Hello, Cisco. Hello, everyone. Does this ERC20 support add any new XM instructions? So I can see the EVM support there was some discussion about adding new instructions. So how's it going?
Yeah, so regarding EVM support, like cross-chain smart contract calls, there was a discussion about having a specific call for doing a smart contract call, like a specific instruction for doing a smart contract call, something like call EVM, but there was discussion of whether it should be more generic, like call contract, but then there should be some way to figure out if it's, I don't know, so EVM or move or whatever type of smart contract. Right now you can still call smart contract using transact. So that discussion is not immediately relevant. And then regarding ERC20s, the idea is that no new instruction will be added. There will just be a different asset ID, which will be account key 20, because it's the identifier for the ERC20. And the work being done is so we can make a transactor that works with Pilot Revive and can actually access the smart contract so that you can, when you receive a message and want to deposit some ERC20, you actually alter the smart contract state. Yeah.
One question then. What's the matter with just using transact? Why is it even introducing new instructions to do the same thing? Like, what's the argument behind that?
Yeah, so there are a few arguments. One of them is that we could immediately identify smart contract calls for example, metrics to know if lots of people are doing smart contract calls. Another is regarding fees. So smart contracts, at least in Pilot Revive, and I know the Akala team also takes storage deposits when you call a contract. And if we had a specific instruction for contracts, we wouldn't allow the configuration to take the fee for the contracts. And I believe there was one more, but I don't remember it. But I believe there's an issue for this on GitHub. I'll share it if I can find it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I can remember.
So isn't the fee stuff relevant for doing message calls as well? Like for doing the regular pallet transactions?
It is, but if we could identify that it's a smart contract call, then we already know that it will be taking storage deposits.
There's no chance that a pallet call in the future wouldn't take storage deposits?
There might be. So the thing with the storage deposits is that it's metered. So even though we know the weight and we charge for execution fees, this is like metered and a separate fee. But yeah, the different calls might choose to do different types of fees, which is also something that we're trying to figure out, because then the dry running, which is supposed to give you the fee so you can correctly estimate the fee, will need to also take into account these different types of fees that can be introduced.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I guess if there is a different resource that you have to manage, it kind of makes sense to have a different call, maybe. But yeah, definitely for like ERC20 stuff, it should just be like the whole point of having a multi-asset there is to be able to do this stuff without having to change infrastructure code.
Yeah, totally. And also for ERC 721, so for NFTs, it will be the same thing. I'm just focusing on ERC 20 for now.
All right. I don't see any more questions. So then my suggestion is we move on with Daniel, rank 1 in the fellowship.
Yeah, hello again.
Hey, Daniel.
So as always, I was focused on XEM and especially the fee estimation. So one of my PRs got merged about the fixing the client facing XM versions of object returned to a client. So client gets the object in the XM version that the client actually expects. So that got merged, and recently I was trying to figure out how to change the XM executors implementation so that we could have a general implementation for the XM payment API method, which converts weight to the selected fee asset. You know, the current situation is that we have different duplicating implementations for converting the weight to the selected fee asset ID. I mean, how much of the selected currency we need to give up to pay for the execution. So I'd like to make it more coherent, more consistent, so that we, in the configuration of the XM executor, we could just insert that, one implementation of conversion to weight fees and reuse it in a common implementation of the weight of the runtime API methods. So that's what I'm working right now. Hopefully I will make a PR soon, and after that maybe I could help Brian with XEM v6 stuff. Maybe we'll see. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel. All right. Next up is David, rank 1 in the fellowship. Hey, David. Maybe David. Okay. It looks like maybe David already left. Good. Then let's move on to next up, Donald, rank 1 in the fellowship. Hey, Donald.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Yeah, so I've been focused basically my entire time on asset hub migration. We've been making good progress. We've had a couple of delays with staking. So we've had to revert a couple of things in stable 2503, and we're going to delegate those to, or leave them for another release that we're going to just make a point release of those new crates. So the multi-block election crate and the sort of client crates. So the ones to talk, because staking will be running on Asset Hub, we need a pallet on Asset Hub and a pallet on the relay to communicate between the two of them. So those pallets will be finalized. They're basically like in a code complete state, but we're just not happy with how robust they are. So they're reverted in stable 2503 because we had a kind of a checkpoint where we just wanted to review how the progress is going, and it was just too close to push for getting those kind of like final changes in, or final polishing changes in. So instead of rushing, since there are new crates, we're just going to leave it for a new release. But yeah, apart from that, the West End migrations should still happen as expected, just when the stable 2503 is done. And so we'll be able to do the asset hub migration on West End kind of like early April. And so yeah, recently I've been working on the runtimes for that. So we deployed Asset Hub Next, which is like the future functionality of Asset Hub, as a new parachain on West End, just so we could give a snapshot of what it will look like. And so like wallets, exchanges, basically anybody except parachains can kind of test any front end and stuff like that, can test their apps with all of the functionality on Asset Hub. but without the actual state migration. So the state on asset.next is kind of like nonsense zero state. So yeah, we deployed that in the last month, and people have been testing with that and giving some feedback. And there's been a lot more interest from all of our partners. Like I said before, we've been talking to people for a while in like a kind of push fashion to try to let them know what's coming, get them to prepare, talk through, especially with like certain groups who we know will be heavily affected. Just talking through what their plans are and suggesting, areas that might be things that they need to change or update to work with Asset Hub in the new format. So yeah, that's kind of been the main thing. Recently, just been sorting changing these migration palettes for the 2503 or like post 2503 world. There are these new like marker traits for decoding things, which is like, because we're using transacts to send all of the state over, we basically have like every single storage item in all the palettes we're migrating. We're like using all of the types as arguments to calls, and so like every single one has to be marked with this decode with mem tracking. So it's a lot of just like bookkeeping changes, and it goes all the way down the stack. So once we have those, there's like a final kind of one last one to do for one of the types, and then we can run the migration as it is right now. So we just need to. Well, Oliver's already said that they're working on and Mukram are working on the staking migration. And so once that, and I think the bounties palette are finished, then we have like a complete migration that we just need to finalize the benchmarks and stuff. So run that West End, see what comes up, and in the meantime, the staking on a parachain work will be kind of tested, made more robust. And once we're happy that everything is in a really good state, then we will push on with Paseo and Kusama.
All right. It sounds like you are in the plan that you also told us last month. Everything's fine?
No, the delay to staking is a real delay. So these crates we've had to revert and kind of pull out of the stable release. We're still working out how much that actually delays things. We can parallelize certain aspects of it, but really we don't want to push anything half baked, and so that's why we had these like this checkpoint and yeah. So the staking team had other stuff to work on recently. Like there was that nominations pool bug that took up some of their time, and also kind of it's staking. So making sure it's all robust is kind of mission critical. So yeah, there is a bit of a delay. Not clear how much it'll affect the Kusama timeline that we have been kind of talking about the last few calls. But it shouldn't be a huge one. It's just we're getting to the point where we know all of the issues, and we want to just improve the test coverage, improve the end-to-end test story, run the migration, and use the actual final state. And so like the migration itself migrates the whole state over. That's not actually finished, and so we haven't actually got like a full end-to-end with the real state functional test for staking yet. And so the fact that we don't have that 2 weeks before the release was like the final, obviously, delay. But yeah, there was room in like between stable 2503 and getting it live on Kusama. We had like 6 weeks of kind of room for integrations, reviews, dry runs, things like that. And so that might end up being a little bit longer.
All right. Okay, got it. Thank you. So then there is one question, so what I would be interested to learn is elastic scaling and when it is going to launch on Polkadot. This has been a question that's been floating around. So I'm not sure if you are the right person to ask, or if anyone can tell me this. It's also related. Is there going to be a Polkadot release in the meantime, or is the next Polkadot release the one where we are going to release the next version?
I think there's going to be a release in the meantime for elastic scaling. But yeah, I'm not the guy to talk about elastic scaling. Definitely Andre, who's already left, would be best place to talk about that. But yeah, as far as I know, the elastic scaling sort of team are looking to deploy something after 25 2412 has been finalized. So there's a patch release to that stable coming out on Thursday, and then that should unblock that. It's just the nomination pools issue being backported, or the solution being backported. It's not the issue. Yeah, that once that's done, I think they want to make a release and upgrade.
Right. So this sounds like it would be a release in the next quarter.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Then I have one more question that I see coming in. Is there any update? Last call we talked about the collator payment situation and how collators are elected. Has there been any progress on this, on the conversation? I'm not sure. Was it? I think you were part of the conversation, but it was like Basty and you in that conversation, right?
Yeah, and George is here this month as well. He was the one who posted the RFC originally. I don't know. I haven't checked the RFC in the last month, in the last couple of weeks. So I don't know if there's any updates.
There have been no updates. I didn't work on it at all. I didn't look into it anymore.
All right. Good.
I mean, there were some comments from Jeff and from Jonas from Web3 Foundation, which I also didn't read yet, but I mean, like there was a little bit of update on that. But yeah, not that much.
So slow progress.
Yes.
Good. Okay. I don't see any questions. I don't see any hands. And I think we covered everyone on our call today. I see one raised hand, Oliver and Donald.
Yeah, so maybe like one more brainstorming topic, but do we have any good ideas what we could do in the Polkadot course to raise like the floor price? Like, you know, currently the Polkadot cores are a bit, I mean, too cheap is like maybe the wrong expression, but it gives like you know, well, maybe too cheap is the right expression, but I mean, what could we do there in there to like, you know, push it up a bit? Like, of course, if you do Bitcoin mining or some kind of mining proof of work activity, it's always inefficient. It's like running inside WASM and then getting re-executed. So, of course, you would rather want to directly run it on your hardware. But yeah, I don't know what, like, maybe you have some ideas what we could do there to like drive the demand a bit.
So one very obvious thing is to get Basty cores, Basty blocks done as soon as possible. And just roll this out as a standard piece of substrate like Polkadot SDK. It's like, how fast do you want your chain to run? And it's like, oh, I'd like my chain to run the fastest. Like, okay, that's fine. That just costs, you know, a bunch more cores, which is currently cheap, so it's fine. But what it does is it eventually creates elastic demand. So chains that actually want more throughput get to pay a bit more. And this elastic demand is super important for the market. At the moment, we have totally inelastic demand. Like either you've got a parachain and you need one core, or you don't, and you don't need any cores. So as long as the number of parachains are less than the number of cores, the price will tend to zero. And as soon as we have some elastic demand, where the maximum demand, even if it's marginal, even if it's a marginal gain, is substantially higher than the supply, we'll end up with a well-functioning market. Now, what would be even better, of course, is elastic demand, so that basically chains run as fast as they need to and have lower latency if there are cores spare, right? So basically, they just author more blocks if cores are sufficiently cheap. And there's stuff to it, you know, there's transactions to have finalized. And I think this, like, basically on-demand block authoring as a default configuration for chains, with the ability to set for the chain itself to set its whatever floor ceiling price for like authoring a block, will be the by far the most useful way of like driving up, or not even driving up, just making a sensible market for core time sales. I mean, you can obviously like fix a floor price, but then, you know, it's like you have to decide the floor price, and then there's going to be arguments over if it's too much, too fast, da, 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 da. I mean, I'm not against it. I think it probably is sensible to have some, basic price for parachain registration and subscription that is it comes with some amount of core time in order to just fix that. But a much better way of doing it would be to actually make the cores more useful.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so like basically making it easier to consume more, so that by consuming more, they drive up the price automatically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Make it easier to consume more. At the moment, we have this very engineering attitude to core time, which is like be as optimized as possible, right? Minimize demand. Yeah. And this isn't really that good for a well-functioning market. We need to be a bit less focused on optimizing usage of cores and a bit more focused on expanding usage of cores.
Yeah, I think this is why the elastic scaling release. I mean, from what I'm aware, we have 7 chains that have an interest to consume a lot of cores, of which I think 6 are live. But it's Asset Hub. Like the future version of Asset Hub is going to consume more cores. We have Peak, with Frequency, Mythical, Origin Trail, Hyperbridge. All of them have interest to use multiple cores.
I mean, the flip side of this is to ensure that a chain can use less of a core if it wants. So basically have on demand. Some chains may need to move to the on demand model simply because they can't afford an actually well-functioning market, at least not until we roll out more cores. But we don't really want to do that until the price is sensible. So I don't know if there are like particular chains that I hear, but it's something that we should just do anyway, is like ensure that the tooling is there so that chains, if they are low value, can run on 1/10 of a core, just every 10 blocks. Have a 1-minute block time instead of a 6-second block time. And for that matter, chains that haven't upgraded to async backing should only actually need half a core, right? They only actually use a core every other block. So this should be supported just as much as we support allowing chains to use multiple cores. And then once we have this, so we have elastic, the ability to supply the ability to have elastic demand, then we can start thinking about supply and bringing in more cores. Obviously, what we shouldn't do is bring in more cores before we have this. That's only going to make matters worse. So I know we've increased the validators to 600 now. We definitely don't want to increase the cores yet. We want to hold that back. Make sure that there is a sensible, well-functioning demand curve, and then start thinking about managing supply, increasing supply.
All right. Donald, I guess you will have a separate topic, right?
Actually, I had some points to make there, but you can't double raise your hand. So,
go ahead.
But yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, when we first deployed core time, it was a big transition of the system, and we wanted to make sure there were enough cores and more so that we didn't penalize anybody for the transition, like anybody who was about to enter an auction for a core and would have got one. You want to maintain the same, like, whatever system agreement that, just from transitioning from one model to the next, it shouldn't be like, oh, these 5 people who would otherwise have got cores through an auction model didn't get them. And so we definitely started with like more cores than the market needed, which meant that the price started to decrease from the start. And then like there are some parameters that we haven't played with yet, or we haven't tweaked yet, that can make the pricing like reflect the market a bit more, because month to month, it's not like we started off where everybody's buying core time and then now we're seeing this slump. It's not like people are not buying because of the price. So in a sense, it's not really like a reflective, the pricing model doesn't reflect the actual economic conditions in the market. So we just have this, like, the demand seems to be the same, but the price is going down. And so I think that from that perspective, I would like to see some sort of tweaks to the model. And I think we can really easily do it by just decreasing the ideal bulk ratio. So like currently, the model works where, say you have 10 cores, you sell 10 cores, and the last price that the price of the last core to sell is the price that's used in the price transition function between sales. Whereas actually, if you have like 15 cores, but every sale you only have 10 people who want to buy them, then the price starts to decrease quite a lot, because like if you fall off the end of the lead-in curve and you get into the fixed period, like that's a really low price, and then it gets like amplified down. But what you can do is you can say, actually, there are 10 cores, but I don't care what the last 4 sell for. So you say, I just care about the first 6 cores. Whatever price the 6th core sells for is the price that's used in the next, or for the transition function. And by fixing that to the actual demand of the system, we can keep something where the price does actually stay stable when the market seems to reflect that sentiment. So yeah.
Does that actually work? Like, wouldn't the median price tend to 0 just as much as the minimum price? I mean, if there are more cores than there are chains, then everyone should pay 0. That's the correct. That's what should happen in the market, in an optimal market.
Yeah, but I'm saying this from the kind of history of us flooding the market with more cores than we kind of should have if we were managing the supply. If Polkadot was a company and we wanted to make a kind of a market where we wanted to make the most out of every core, we would have like started core time with no cores in the market and drip fed them out one by one. And only kind of released a new core when we knew there was a demand to do that. And so, like, if you look at Kusama, where we just like dumped loads of cores in and we didn't change any of the parameters, like it very rapidly like went right down. Here we're not really.
My point is, this is a well-functioning market. There is 0 elasticity in either supply and demand. Like, supply is fixed, demand is fixed, and there is less demand than there is supply. That will tend to a resource price of 0.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get around this by tweaking some parameters. That's just the market price right now.
Yeah.
So we can either bias the market with a minimum price, right? That's so we just ignore the supply and demand curves and we just say no. We just put a floor. Or my much preferred option is to make supply and demand. Well, supply is harder, but demand, make it elastic. So make it actually a curve, not a asymptote.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Like, it's better to do that, but I do think that because we want to have a system, like we are not just aiming for like a totally economically efficient system. We also want to have something where like a bidder who's willing to pay more for a core gets it. And if you get to a price where it's too low, it kind of just, I suppose you could view it as being a race for like fastest finger first. If you don't have the sensitivity and the range for somebody who's willing to pay a big premium, and your pricing curve only starts at like 10 dot, and everybody's willing to pay 10 dot, then there's no differentiation in like who is willing to pay more for the core. So
yeah, okay, so that's fair, but for that you need an elastic demand, right? You need some people willing to pay more than others, and that demand, the max demand, needs to be higher than the supply. At the moment, it's not.
Yeah.
Like, chains cannot use more than one core easily, anyway, and there's fewer chains than there are cores, so no one wants to buy some cores. Like, there are some cores that literally nobody wants to buy, and when you're in that situation, all cores are worth 0, and making the minimum price like the thing that the auction starts at, more or less, isn't going to make any difference. It's I mean, obviously fixing the minimum price will make everyone pay that who can afford it, but altering any particular month that price curve isn't going to have a significant long-term effect. The way that that curve will work just fine if there is a sensible demand curve, but there isn't. I mean, and that therefore what we see is a badly functioning market, not because of the mechanism. The mechanism is fine, like the auction mechanism is fine, because the market itself is fucked. There are too many cores and not enough ways to use them. So again, I'm like, I don't think we need to faff around altering or at least I don't see this as being a particularly useful focus of work to change the auction mechanism. For sure, it can be improved, like all market mechanisms can be improved, but any coding time spent on that and not spent on bringing forward on-demand core time, like the ability to use core time like arbitrarily by chains, is badly prioritized, right? It should be all like, it should be hands down work on making more demand for cores, not faffing around with the pricing mechanism.
Yeah, there's one knob we can twiddle that doesn't require any code change, and it's just setting a number, which is what I was talking about. But definitely, yeah, agree with all sentiments apart from that.
Yep.
So a few people in chat have asked to bring up this ref. It's Kusama ref 507. Maybe Jay, can you post it in the chat for the group, please? Or we can show it on screen maybe. So this is a referendum on Kusama asking to reduce the inflation and setting a realistic target for core time sales. And so one part of the proposal is to reduce the Kusama inflation to 5%. And the other part is reducing ideal bulk core time sales. And so the proposal is to set the ideal bulk proportion from 100% to 40%. So I assume this is the parameter that sets like when is the ideal amount of sold cores to maybe 40 cores. So I guess if I understand the proposal correctly, it's about setting an arbitrary point where you say as soon as we sell more than 40 cores, the price will start rising. Any thoughts on that? Is it like a reasonable proposal? I think it goes a little bit into the direction of what Donald says, where if you have buyers that are willing to pay a certain price, for like then the price will start rising. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I read this earlier. I think Daniel actually spoke to Daniel about it a couple of weeks ago, because I posted about this when this came up last time, when there was a minimum price that was suggested for core time on Kusama. That was like a few months ago. We discussed it in the call. But yeah, the proposal is proposing quite a lot more than just the core time parameters. Like the thing about reducing the inflation from 10% to 5%. And then just having a quick scan through. Like I think that the best overview of it, Jonas posted a question on it, or a message, a reply. Just saying it's like validators are the most directly affected stakeholders of this proposal. Having of token rewards, there are ways to recoup it from stakers, and yeah, a few other things. But I think that like there's an argument in it about how like increasing the core time sales would like offset the inflation a bit, but I don't know, because like the amount that you actually burn from core time sales is nearly negligible when you compare that to like the actual inflation or treasury burns as a deflationary mechanism. So like treasury burns are like the only real effective deflationary pressure, and you would have to put core time prices up a lot and like basically be setting them at prices that people wouldn't really pay, I think. But yeah, I think that like in terms of the overall referendum, I think that yeah, Jonas's comment is a great overview. Like, it's, if you want to have a high risk experiment, then it could be a good thing. And if validators are willing to take a risk, or to change the let me just find it. Eyeballing the current average, it might be around 15 to 20% decrease, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, personally, I think that the argument still holds that the optimization for more demand and make sure that we can serve more demand is, I would say, in the near term, the better strategy. And then you can think about value extraction in the future. But I think right now it's actually about increasing the surface area for everyone who wants to build on a core, on a chain, or just making it more available. Okay. Good. We had a little bit of a discussion and went over time, but I feel like this was also a relevant and necessary discussion. I think we're going to revisit the discussion after we have launched elastic scaling and actually see how some of our favorite chains are going to use up the cores that are available. So yeah, let's wrap it up. I think this was a very good call. Last time we had a lot more discussion about Asset Hub and what's going on over there. People are still working on it, but today's discussion was also much more diverse. And yeah, I think this was a very productive call today, very informative. So thank you for all of you coming today. And with that, I would say we wrap it up. Have a good month, everyone, and thanks for coming. Goodbye.